Welcome to the Crocodile School podcast with Hylke Faber, transformational coach and founder of Growth Leaders Network, an award-winning author of Taming Your Crocodiles, and Carson V. Heady, best-selling author of Salesman on Fire and sales director at Microsoft, as they explore together how we stay connected to and lead from our best selves. Where do we find the wherewithal to choose again and respond from our best selves, instead of giving into fear-based reactivity, especially when challenged? How do we tame our crocodiles, those fear-driven voices that want to protect our ego at all cost? How do we become what we would like the world to become? Allow yourself to become present and enjoy this episode of the Crocodile School podcast.
Welcome to this episode of the Crocodile School podcast. I'm your host, Hylke Faber. Today, I'm actually here with Rick Gage. Rick, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm no Carson Heady, but I'm delighted to be here.
You are Rick Gage, which I'm so happy about. Rick is my colleague in Growth Leaders Network. And today we'll have a conversation about balance as part of the Crocodile School podcast. The intention of the Crocodile School podcast is to help us to connect more deeply to what's true about us and become also aware of what we call those crocodiles, those patterns that are driven by fear, ego, when we know we're not our best, but it's there. And today we're going to work on balance. So as we think about balance, I invite you to consider for a moment, what is it like to be off balance? We all have that experience. I had it this morning when when some things don't go the way I want them to, especially then my brain starts to feel and act a certain way, and I start to feel a little overactive. I want to make something happen. Rick, what happens for you when you're off balance? What happens for you when you're off balance?
I notice it first often in my body as a kind of an agitation, maybe an unsettledness in my gut. Sometimes it's I can't sit still. I just my body wants to move, and I demand that it stay, here in front of the screen or in the meeting, but it really wants to move. And so when I notice it wanting to move, that's a good clue that there's some reactivity going on in me that may have me not at my best.
Yeah. So there's this body mind that is very creative in causing some kind of inner uproar, where it says no, 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 no. So that's off balance. Now, today we're going to talk about what it means to be in balance and what balance means. And the beautiful thing about balance is that nature teaches us so much about balance. When we walk in nature, it always strikes me that there's not a fallen tree that looks out of harmony. It all fits somehow perfectly. It's all in harmony. And we notice this in nature. Like there's night and day, and there's cold and warm, and there's dry and rain, and there is the beginning and the end. There's winter and there's summer. There's so many examples of balance in nature. And I don't know about you, but like when I walk into a cold evening and then I come home and put on the fireplace or something like that, there's a nice there's actually some the human beings were able to experience pleasure from balance, being in balance, you could say, when we have real balance. And I see this as also, as I think about working with leaders or leading myself or an organization, when I'm in balance, there's a certain flow, there's a certain giving, there's a certain possibility. There's almost like we're flying together, like eagles. We're flying together. Things happen, we take care of things, and we listen to each other, and we're creative, and we're be able to be empathetic. We are purposeful where we're going. It sort of works, you could say. What is it like for you, Rick, when you are in balance? What is that experience for you?
Well, the interesting thing I think I find about balance is my sort of thinking mind wants to find the formula for balance. It should be certain percentage this, percentage that, 50-50, or maybe, something else. But as you described, nature's balance, it isn't that things are some static amount of one or the other. It's an ebb and a flow over time of all of those things. So in a certain sense, the agitation maybe is that I need to shift balance, right? It's a feeling of dis-ease that is a clue to me that an adjustment is in order to come back into balance. That the imbalance is the holding out of a part of me that should come in now to be a part of of who I need to be in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I experience that as a certain level of resistance when I'm out of balance in some way, like the inner fist that says no, and then it's just okay. What happens if I let this part go, or integrate it, or listen to it? It often involves a sense of inner softening or inner ease, you could say, inner grace. In the East, they made a beautiful distinction between yin and yang. In Taming Your Crocodiles, I described that in one of the chapters of the book. And when I think about that, when I think about yin and yang, we can think about that also as how yin and yang shows up in our body. That's an easy way to relate to it for me. Like yin having more to do with the right brain, the intuitive, and also the left side of my body, sort of the more receptive part. The receptive part, you could ascribe it in common vernacular as sort of creative, connected. You may want to call it something having to do with feminine, but nothing to do with the gender. I actually have a lot more yin energy than yang energy, and the yang energy more having to do with the left side of my brain, more logic, um, goal oriented, rational, and actually the right side of my body. So those kind of things in neuroscience, you've just understood that the right side of my brain is connected to the left side of my body, and the left side of my brain is connected to the right side of my body. So in the East, they make this beautiful distinction, and they draw yin and yang as a circle, and they say these two have to move in balance. So the ratio and the feelings, you could say, the mind and the heart, that's another way to think about this, have to work together to create balance. In leadership, this shows up as, a higher yin leader is very empathetic and considers the feelings of everyone, and listens deeply. However, if we just stay there, we don't get anything done, right? Or you get stuff done, but we don't only get part of it done. We might get out of business, because there's also a yang side to it, which is we have to be purposeful. We have to make difficult decisions. We have to be able to stay still in the storm and look for clarity and drive clarity. So we always have those two parts that need to operate together. And when I am in my best yin yang conscious integration, I don't have to think about it. It comes from this place which to me is beyond yin and yang, which you could call is presence or heart presence. There's a quiet and a silence, almost like when you're singing, or when you're taking a walk, or admiring something, or you're talking to a friend, and there's just flow, and the yin and yang just give themselves from you. Like, oh, I know now it's time to listen. Oh, now I know it's time to call it quits, or call something out. And there's no aggression in it. It's just more of a natural flow. It's almost like sing a song is how I relate to that. So what about you, Rick? How do you relate to those ideas of the yin, the creative connected, and the yang, which we could call higher purposeful? How do you relate to that?
It's interesting. I for other reasons this morning, I watched again the Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor TED Talk, where My Stroke of Genius, where she had a stroke that basically took her left brain offline. And as a brain scientist, she got to watch that happening, and she describes it in really interesting and vivid ways. And while that now is a little bit dated and brain science continues to move forward, there is an interesting frame around it that I think is helpful. She frames the right brain is the part that knows this present moment in detail. Is about all the things coming in now. And she talks about, even I lose the sense of where my body ends and something else begins. There's this deep sense of the interconnectedness of everything, but there is no past, there is no future, there's only this present moment. And that the left brain is that which is holding the past and projecting into the future, and is absolutely vital to taking action. In the course of her stroke, she needed her left brain to come back online momentarily so she could figure out how to call for help and get out of the situation. So we really need both parts to be both present in this moment and to hold the context of this moment. So I think it's interesting to pull those things together, and people have found a lot of value in thinking about it as masculine, feminine, but also that's limiting. And it's very important to whatever extent you think of it in that way, to keep it in the context of all of us have all of that in us, and it's not our gender expression, whatever that gender expression may be, but it's finding, how do I bring forward the part of me that would be most helpful now, in combination with the other parts of me that would also be helpful now. That to me is what the balance is that we're looking for. I want to be able to access this present moment. And often, for many of us, we spend so much time in the linear thinking, left brain parts of things, that this discussion of balance is about bringing in more right brain. Just like for most of us, when we talk about work-life balance, it isn't that we need more work, it's that we need more life, right? But it isn't some static thing. It's that we need to find a better ebb and flow and a better way of coming into this moment with, what do I need right now?
Yeah.
What combination of the parts of me would be most helpful right now for me to be my best self for this moment?
And I also hear in this, Rick, not making any part wrong, not saying, oh, this left side brain rational bit is stupid. No, is just, are we having an over reliance on either side? And actually, I'm a case where I have been over reliant in my life on the yin side, in many cases. Sometimes I go over relying on yang, but sometimes I can be over reliant on yin, and I become indecisive, you could say. And then I can just, that's why I think I almost became a monk. I can dwell into the abyss of peace, nothing, you could say. And then there's nothing to do. But there's also a lot to do. So I love what you're saying about what's called for now. And that to me is also pointing to a distinction that says, when we are in our higher self, we are about being of service, and the boundary between you and I is not defined by my ego. It's defined by something else that has a much higher logic to it than my little me versus you logic. It's more like, oh, I'm in this together with you. I'm part of one here, right? And that also gets us into the discussion about what happens when these energies, you could say, those capacities in us become hijacked, you could say, by our reactivity. So when we fall into what we can call the lower yin and the lower yang, not to make it bad, but just to notice that. And what I notice in looking on the lower yang side, the purposefulness becomes control. Like I am trying to, like something happens, something doesn't happen the way I want it to go, and then what the lower yang side is like, let me go fix it, right? Or let me go overpower it, or let me come in with a really clever argument to relieve you from the misery of your opinion, or let me just show you how it is. It's mad. It is mad, but it takes a lot of energy. And if I think about schooling, a lot of schooling, at least the way I experienced it, was somewhat tempting me to really become very lower yang, to become like the erudite person that knew, like my lower yang dream is You become the most knowledgeable, the one with most money, the most power, the most management tricks. So I can basically control everything around me, right? And we all know that doesn't lead to very good leadership outcomes, happy life, and leads to destruction of relationships, self, planet, everything else. So that's a little bit of lower yang, right? On the lower yin side, there's another kind of dream. You could say this goes from being connected to being pleasing, manipulating bit. Like there's also a dream of control in it, but now this time it's not through logic, but it's through feeling. Like, oh, look at me, like, oh, I'm having this really hard time. There was a time in my life where I thought the only way I could get people to talk to me is when I talked to them about my sob story first, you know, or when in a meeting, some stuff doesn't go my way, I think I need to become dramatic about something, like make it, play it up into this big drama. And so that's part of, you could say, the lower yin bit, where we try to manipulate, please, cajole, maybe not say what we want, but kind of sort of stir the pot of the energy to get what we need it to have. So the dream of the lower yin is, you know, if I'm actually, this is interesting. I was an opera singer at some point almost. I did some training in that and loved it. But there's kind of like this dramatic roar dream. Like, and if I'm just able to master that, then I am gonna get what I'm gonna be able to get, what I need to get. And I think the common denominator of both lower yang and lower yin is that it's all about me, my little me, self-seeking, trying to control the world around me for me. So in that way, and I know it, it's a contracting energy. It's very different from the expansive giving orientation of higher yin and higher yang. So Rick, what about you? What is it like for you, this lower yang and lower yin side?
The lower yin and yang, if I look at them, always root to a fear. Right? There's a crocodile behind what's going on. There's a in my lower yin, it's a fear of letting down those I love. Yeah. I don't want to feel the feeling I have to feel when I've let somebody down, and I'll do anything I can imagine to avoid that. And so I'm driven by that. And there's this sense of being driven in the lower space for me. In the lower yang, as you've described, it's a control. It's a take the responsibility. Fine, I'll do it. You know, that kind of I'm going to grab it and I'm going to get it. And there's a need to be right that actually sits in both the yin and the yang for me. The yin is you'll see eventually that my way is the right way. Eventually you'll understand that I was right all along. And the yang side, it's more directive. It's more you'll agree and concede, and you'll accept my argument. You'll be boxed into a corner by the brilliance of my legal mind, and then you'll have to accept this. And the energy of the higher space is so different than that. It's not this drivenness. It's not this avoiding the fear at all costs kind of energy.
Thank you for that. Well, we'll take a short break. After the break, we will do a little practice on specific situations and play with the yin and yang. So we've been talking with Rick Gates from Growth Leaders Network. Today, Carson Heady is having other priorities he is attending to. Think about higher yang and higher yin. It's like being of service to. And we've been talking about yin and yang and how to come from this place, this higher place of service, which is not about me, but more about the higher collective, what's needed now, and contrasting that with the lower side, where it's all about me and where I'm coming from fear. See you after the break.
You are listening to the Crocodile School podcast, where we are exploring connecting deeply to our true selves, especially when challenged. If you would like to learn more about leadership and team connectedness and taming the crocodiles that get in the way of leading from our true selves, please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now back to the Crocodile School podcast with your hosts Hylke Faber and Carson V. Heady.
Yeah, there's that sense of stillness, that still point that strikes me. Uh, in the book in chapter 5 of Taming Your Crocodiles, we first talk about yin and yang, and then we talk about this place of presence that always is, like the balance that is beyond balance. That is that place of presence, being in the moment. Um, you know, we're using so many words for it, but this place of being in the heart. It's a place where I can always go to, and sometimes the only place to go to, because at the moment there may be nothing to do, just to be, and that can be so powerful. I think one of the realizations I've had over the last years more and more is that there's often far less for me to do, to say, or to extend, and far more for me to just be for a moment and let things happen. And then I know the right action, it shows itself. It's not as much of it. It comes from a much more loving place and far less fearful place, as you were talking about. So, yeah. So, Rick, what is that place for you? That place of presence. What's that like for you?
One of the hallmarks of that for me is that my curiosity is active. That I'm, what's happening here? Um, I wonder why this is happening. Oh, look, there's that part of me that's reactive now. I wonder what that's about. When I'm driven, I'm not able to sort of take that step back and look. When the observer is really able to be present, that's often a clue that I'm in that balance beyond balance. There's a holding of everything more lightly, more gently. I noticed, even as you talked about it, you were talking about the lower yin yang, and I watched your clenched fists. And that is kind of the feeling of the lower, is that it's clenched, and the feeling of the higher is an openness. It's an open palm. It's a let's see what's here. It's an exploration. It's a what might be the possibilities.
Yeah, it's beautiful what language does. Possibilities, even the sound of that has an opening to it. So grateful for whoever came up with that word, that they thought about it that way. So let's make this very practical, right? So there's a space for us to become very aware of what's going on with us, like you're describing, Rick, taking a step back, which can happen by taking a walk, or by meditating, or just simply taking a few deep breaths, or simply being intentional, like in this moment, like feeling in my body, am I feeling more towards drivenness and control, or am I feeling more towards drivenness, towards worrying about other people, or am I really called to this higher place of service, purposefulness, and connectedness? Not making any of it wrong. It's like, oh, curious. I'm just watching this whole thing unfold, and then making some choices. So let's think about a specific example, and I'm happy to start. We are running a business called Growth Leaders Network, and part of that is that we're delivering projects, and we're also, quote unquote, marketing and selling projects. And in that marketing and sales cycle, there's invariably the client hasn't responded yet tendency or phase. And what I notice in that for me is, when that happens, and that happened this week, is that there's an immediate clenching in me that happens, and what I need to do, and how clever I need to be, and what do I need to do to advance this? What do I need to say to them? What do I need to do? And when I take a balcony view on that, which is basically, I notice that I'm in lower yang, trying to control, or maybe I won't try to do the lower yin. I'm not going to say, oh, I feel so sad that you haven't responded yet. I'm not going to do that. I might have done that earlier in my dating life when I was a little younger. And when I look at it the other way, then I'm also starting to think about the client. What's their experience? Oh, they're probably working through something. What's of service to them? Maybe not saying anything, or just a very gentle check-in. But there's no desperation in it. And not like you need to give me something so I feel better. And that tends to free my energy up for being creative and of service in the places that I need to be creative at, and also keeps the relationships clean. What is that like for you, Rick?
Well, when you asked, I flashed back to a meeting late last week, which I was with some colleagues who wanted me to take some action that was different than I felt right taking. And I felt quite triggered and activated in the conversation. There were three other people, and they all had a shared view of what I should do. And I could feel the sort of lower yin part of me that felt, well, maybe I should just give up and somebody else should do this. You know, I'm obviously not making you all happy, and so maybe I should just step back and one of you should step forward and do this. I could feel the yang part of me say, I've been doing this for 40 years. I know how to do this. Expletive, expletive. Just back off and let me do what I know how to do. And I could feel that neither of those were useful, but they were both very present to me. And fortunately, it's a group of colleagues that I can be pretty open with. So I was able to share, you know, I've got these things going on in me. Here are some reactions that are present for me. And vocalizing those and saying them allowed me to sort of, okay, there they are. All right. Now, you all have a point of view here that I really want to listen to, because maybe there's something in here that I could take forward. I want to be curious about what is it about what I'm saying and the way I'm thinking about it that may not be taking full account of the situation. And so I was able to open up and hear the counsel and make some adaptations in the approach I was taking and take it forward. But the experience was that I needed to kind of clear the lower yin and yang energy so that I could open to that higher expression or experience and take in what was really well-intentioned guidance, counsel, suggestion, which made me quite reactive to start.
Yeah. It strikes me that when I look at the world with lower yang eyes, it's a battle. And I also don't read my emails correctly. Like what people say, like just like your colleagues were saying right now, is going to be seen as an attack or something I have to overcome. Or with lower yin, I will see everything as they're out there to hurt me, you know, in some way, or I have to protect myself. And with the eyes of, you could say, the heart or the owl, which the metaphor we use in this book, Taming Your Crocodiles, like the owl and the crocodiles, the eyes of the heart. The owl, it's more like you're saying, it's a sense of curiosity that comes online, and not taking it personally. It's got nothing to do with me. It's got to do with the situation, and then it sheds some light on, well, what's needed now. So we're coming to the end of this reflection on yin and yang, chapter 5 from Taming Your Crocodiles. Rick, is anything that you'd like to say by way of closing?
It's such an interesting dance. And it's kind of a never-ending dance. And that's both the challenge and the joy of it, is that balance is different in every moment. And so we get to find it again and again.
Thank you for that sense of infinity, which we don't know what the challenge is going to be that's going to show up today. And from my fearful mind, that's a problem because I want to control everything and know the outcome. And from the heart, this is a delightful exploration. Like, oh, I get to go on a hike again today and see what I discover. So that looking at life with the eyes of discovery is one tool that we can use to find our higher yin and yang. And then also, as Rick was sharing, just to share with what's going on with us, with people that we trust, can help to lessen the charge, the pull of those crocodilian energies that actually have as a nightmare that we might be vulnerable to others. And just simply the speaking of that helps to heal some of that fearful reactivity, which we also can recognize is not uniquely individual. It's something that's generational, societal, of the ages. So actually, we're doing an act of evolution when we're sharing and saying, "No, I'm going to choose again." So if you're listening today, I'm inviting you to think for a moment and sit back and just be curious. What is it like to be in balance, to have balance? And what is it like to bring that energy of balance to whatever is going on in your day today? And letting go any controlling or pleasing energies that may get in the way of that. And if you notice them, it's okay. Right. Okay. All right. Let's dance. Let's have fun with it. Thank you for listening to the Crocodile School podcast today. Today we were focusing on balance, chapter 5 of Taming Your Crocodiles. In a month, we'll do some more work on this, chapter 5 on balance with Carson Heady, where we also hear some of his experiences working with balance. So for now, see you next time and have a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining the Crocodile School podcast with your hosts Hylke Faber and Carson V. Heady. Take a moment to pause and appreciate something about yourself. And enjoy taming your crocodiles, growing more and more into your true potential. See you next time at the Crocodile School.